Life is full of challenges. From the moment we wake up to the time we close our eyes at night, we're faced with choices, obstacles, and opportunities to grow. But sometimes the hardest part is knowing where to start. That's where Make Your Bed by Admiral William H. McRaven comes in. Based on the 10 life-changing lessons he learned during his Navy SEAL training, this book is a powerful guide to tackling life's toughest moments with courage, discipline, and hope. These lessons aren't just for soldiers or those in extreme situations. They're universal. Whether you're striving to overcome a personal challenge, achieve a dream, or simply improve your day-to-day life, Admiral McRaven's wisdom will resonate with you. In this summary, we'll dive into each chapter and uncover how small, deliberate actions can lead to a big impact not just in your life, but in the world around you. So why should you listen? Because this book isn't just about surviving life's hardships. It's about thriving in the face of them. It's about discovering the strength you already have within you. And who doesn't need a little more strength, resilience, and hope? Let's start with Chapter 1, where we learn that the first step to changing the world is surprisingly simple: making your bed. If you want to change the world, start by making your bed. That's how Admiral McRaven kicks off his first lesson. And while it might sound simple, even trivial, it's anything but. In the disciplined world of Navy SEAL training, making your bed every morning isn't just about tidiness. It's about starting your day with a small win. A perfectly made bed sets the tone for success. It's a task you can control, no matter how unpredictable the rest of your day might be. And at the end of a long, grueling day, there's something comforting about coming back to a bed that's neat, made with precision, and ready to provide you with rest. In his SEAL training, McRaven recalls how the instructors would inspect every inch of that bed: hospital corners, smooth blankets, and the pillow perfectly aligned. If it wasn't up to standard, there was no leniency. The punishment? A humiliating trip to the surf and a roll in the sand, turning you into a sugar cookie, covered in grit from head to toe. It taught discipline and attention to detail, but it also taught resilience because life, like those inspections, doesn't always reward your efforts. McRaven learned that these small victories matter, even outside of SEAL training. In moments of personal struggle, like recovering from a devastating parachute accident or witnessing the tragedies of war, he found solace in the act of making his bed. It symbolized a fresh start, a step forward, no matter how hard the day before had been. It was a small but powerful reminder that even when life feels overwhelming, you can still control the little things, and sometimes that's enough to keep you going. The beauty of this lesson is its simplicity. You don't need to be a Navy SEAL to start your day with purpose. Make your bed. Nail that first task. Build momentum. And when the day ends, no matter what chaos unfolded, at least you've done one thing right. And yet, life isn't meant to be tackled alone. As McRaven transitions to his next lesson, he reflects on the importance of teamwork, the people who help you paddle when the waters get rough. Because while making your bed might be a solitary act, the journey ahead is anything but. Let's dive into Chapter 2, where the power of connection takes center stage. Here's an engaging summary of Chapter 2 in the same conversational, audiobook style. If you want to change the world, find someone to help you paddle. That's the heart of Admiral McRaven's second lesson, and it's all about the power of teamwork. In SEAL training, teamwork isn't just encouraged, it's a matter of survival. One of the most vivid examples comes from the grueling first phase of training, where trainees were tasked with paddling a 10-foot rubber boat across rough, unrelenting waters. 7 men to a boat, all working together. If even one person wasn't pulling their weight, the whole crew suffered. McRaven paints a picture of what happens when one member of the team is struggling. Maybe they're sick, injured, or just plain exhausted. It's during those moments that the magic of teamwork shines. The others step up. They paddle harder, dig deeper, and carry the extra load. It's a lesson that stretches far beyond the water. Life, McRaven tells us, is too hard to tackle alone. We all need someone in our corner, someone who will give us their rations when we're running on empty, someone who will help us paddle when our arms give out. And equally, we have to be ready to do the same for others. McRaven shares a personal story to drive the point home, a terrifying parachuting accident that left him with a shattered pelvis and months of recovery ahead. During that time, it was his wife, his friends, and even his commanding officers who carried him literally and figuratively. His wife became his nurse, his boss found a way to save his career, and his friends showed up when he needed them most. Their support made it clear, no one succeeds alone. This chapter isn't just a celebration of teamwork, it's a call to action. Find your crew. Lean on them when you need to. Be there for them when it's their turn to struggle. Because as McRaven says, none of us can paddle the boat alone. And just as no one goes it alone, life doesn't reward us for the size of our muscles or the length of our resume. In the next chapter, McRaven dives into a truth that defines SEALs and life alike. Only the size of your heart matters. Let's see what that means in Chapter 3. If you want to change the world, measure a person by the size of their heart. That's the lesson Admiral McRaven dives into in Chapter 3, and it's one of the most inspiring truths from his time in SEAL training. In a world often obsessed with appearances, power, or status, McRaven learned that none of those things mattered when it came to perseverance, grit, and courage. What mattered most was the size of your heart. He tells the story of a young trainee, a man barely 5'4", dwarfed by the towering instructors. This trainee was constantly underestimated, mocked for his size, and told he didn't belong. But on the day of a grueling 2-mile swim in rough surf, that same man proved everyone wrong. While others faltered, he pushed forward, finishing near the top of the class. His secret? Not his height, his muscles, or even his experience. It was his unshakable determination, his heart, that carried him across the finish line. McRaven reflects on how this lesson extends beyond the training grounds. As a young officer, he had similar doubts about himself and others. He recalls an encounter with one of the most decorated SEALs in history, Lieutenant Tom Norris, a quiet, unassuming man who had been told he didn't have what it took to become a SEAL. And yet, Norris went on to receive the Medal of Honor for his extraordinary courage in Vietnam. His story stands as a reminder. It's not about how big or strong you look. It's about your will to keep going, even when the odds are against you. This lesson is a universal truth, McRaven explains. Whether you're tackling a career, facing a personal struggle, or standing up to challenges, your success will never be defined by your appearance or background. It's about resilience, heart, and the drive to prove people and life wrong. And while having heart can carry you far, the road won't always be fair. Life, as McRaven reminds us, is filled with setbacks, disappointments, and challenges that feel utterly unjust. In Chapter 4, he shares what it means to face life's unfairness head-on and keep moving forward. Let's explore that next. If you want to change the world, get over being a sugar cookie and keep moving forward. Admiral McRaven doesn't sugarcoat this lesson: life isn't fair, and the sooner you accept that, the better off you'll be. This chapter dives into one of the most frustrating parts of SEAL training, the dreaded sugar cookie. It wasn't a sugary treat, though. Instead, it was a punishment where you were ordered to run into the ocean, get soaking wet, and then roll in the sand until every inch of your body was coated. The worst part? There was often no real reason for it. You could follow every rule, excel in every task, and still end up wet and sandy. McRaven recalls how this seemingly arbitrary punishment taught him and his fellow trainees an invaluable lesson. Life doesn't always reward your hard work or good intentions. Sometimes, despite your best efforts, you'll fail. You'll face challenges or setbacks that have nothing to do with what you've done, and you'll want to scream, "Why me?" But the truth is, complaining or dwelling on the unfairness won't change a thing. The only option is to shake off the sand and keep going. This idea becomes especially powerful when McRaven talks about his friend and mentor, Lieutenant Moki Martin. Moki was a SEAL instructor and a phenomenal athlete, known for his prowess in triathlons. But one day, during a routine bike ride, a head-on collision left him paralyzed from the waist down. Moki's life was changed forever in an instant, a cruel twist of fate that no one could have predicted. Yet, instead of letting the unfairness of his situation define him, Moki rose above it. He became an accomplished painter, a devoted father, and the founder of a major triathlon. He refused to let life's injustices hold him back. McRaven's message is clear. Life will knock you down, often in ways that feel unfair or undeserved. But what defines you isn't the fall, it's how you get back up. Don't waste time blaming circumstances or searching for fairness. Just stand tall, look ahead, and drive on. Of course, learning to embrace life's unfairness is only part of the equation. The next chapter tackles another crucial challenge we all face: failure. And as McRaven explains, failure isn't the end, it's what makes you stronger. Let's dive into Chapter 5. If you want to change the world, don't be afraid of the circus. This chapter begins with a vivid image from SEAL training. The circus, a dreaded extra 2 hours of punishing exercises given to those who failed to meet the day's rigorous standards. It was designed to wear you down, to break your spirit, and to weed out the weak. And once you landed in the circus, it was easy to spiral. Exhaustion from the extra workouts often meant you'd fail the next day, landing you in yet another circus. Admiral McRaven remembers his own battle with the circus. He and his swim buddy, Ensign Mark Thomas, struggled with a swim event and were called out for falling behind. The punishment was immediate. They were put on the circus list. What followed were days of relentless extra push-ups, flutter kicks, and sit-ups, pushing their bodies to the brink. The instructors doubted their ability to survive SEAL training, and McRaven admits he doubted himself too. But something unexpected happened. Instead of letting the circus break them, McRaven and his swim buddy leaned into the challenge. The grueling punishment made them stronger, faster, and more resilient. Day by day, they clawed their way back. By the end of training, they went from trailing the pack to leading it. The pain and failure of the circus didn't just test them, it transformed them. McRaven explains that life's failures are like the circus. They're inevitable, painful, and often demoralizing. But if you face them head-on, if you allow them to teach you and make you stronger, those failures can become the foundation of your success. Failure isn't the enemy, it's part of the process. He shares another personal story of failure, being fired from a SEAL command early in his career. It was a crushing blow to his confidence and reputation, but instead of quitting, he used the experience to fuel his determination. He worked harder, learned from his mistakes, and eventually earned back the respect of his peers. That failure, like the circus, didn't define him, it made him better. Failure will come for all of us, McRaven reminds us. The key is not to fear it, but to embrace it, learn from it, and let it build you into someone stronger. And as we move forward, McRaven shifts gears to explore another critical lesson: daring greatly. Because if you truly want to change the world, you have to take risks. Let's see what that looks like in Chapter 6. If you want to change the world, slide down the obstacle headfirst. In this chapter, Admiral McRaven brings us to the SEAL obstacle course, a brutal test of strength, agility, and courage. One obstacle, in particular, looms large: the slide for life, a 30-foot-high tower with a thick rope stretching 100 feet down to the ground. Trainees could inch their way across the rope slowly, hanging underneath it, or they could take a risk and go down headfirst, faster but far more dangerous. The safe method guaranteed completion but came with no chance of a record time. The headfirst method required courage, trust in your abilities, and a willingness to risk failure. For a long time, McRaven chose the safe route. He hung beneath the rope, taking careful, deliberate movements to avoid falling. But one day, he decided to take the plunge literally. Sliding down headfirst, he not only completed the obstacle in record time, but he also realized the importance of daring greatly. This small moment on the course taught him that sometimes, in life, you have to take calculated risks if you want to achieve extraordinary things. That lesson stayed with him, particularly during a daring hostage rescue mission in Iraq. Intelligence indicated that terrorists were about to move 3 hostages, and the window to save them was closing fast. The only option was a daylight raid, something every rulebook advised against. To make matters worse, the plan required Black Hawk helicopters to land inside a tiny compound, with inches to spare between the blades and the surrounding walls. It was a high-risk mission, and failure could mean the loss of lives. But McRaven approved the mission, trusting in the skill of his team. As he watched the operation unfold, the risks became real. One helicopter clipped a wall, barely making it down safely. Dust from the landing blinded the pilots. But in the end, the team pulled it off. The hostages were rescued, And McRaven's decision to take that leap of faith paid off. It was a moment that underscored the lesson from the obstacle course: sometimes you have to slide headfirst, even when the stakes are high. McRaven reminds us that taking risks doesn't mean acting recklessly. It's about trusting your training, your preparation, and your courage. Life's greatest achievements often come when you're willing to push past fear and take a leap into the unknown. And speaking of fear, McRaven now shifts focus to a lesson that's all about confronting it. In Chapter 7, he tackles bullies, both the ones in the schoolyard and the ones in life. Let's dive in and see what it takes to stand up to the sharks. If you want to change the world, don't back down from the sharks. In Chapter 7, Admiral McRaven takes us into the deep, dark waters, both literally and metaphorically. He recounts a grueling night swim off San Clemente Island during SEAL training. The water was cold, the currents were strong, and the biggest threat wasn't the waves but the sharks. Not just any sharks, but great whites, the apex predators of the ocean. The trainees had been briefed on all the dangers they might encounter, but the great white was the one that stuck in everyone's mind. Swimming in pitch-black water, knowing that something could be lurking below, was enough to rattle even the strongest among them. But McRaven and his swim buddy pressed on, determined not to let fear get the better of them. That's the lesson he drives home. In life, there will always be sharks, bullies, obstacles, and fears that try to intimidate you. Whether they come in the form of people, circumstances, or self-doubt, these sharks thrive on fear. And the moment you show weakness, they strike. He ties this lesson to one of the most powerful experiences of his career: the capture and imprisonment of Saddam Hussein. Even after his fall from power, Saddam radiated the same arrogance and intimidation that had allowed him to rule Iraq with terror for decades. McRaven describes watching Iraqi leaders confront their former dictator, only to see them shrink back in fear. Even in a prison cell, Saddam's presence was enough to cow them. It wasn't until he was isolated, stripped of his ability to instill fear, that his power was finally neutralized. McRaven's point is clear. Bullies, like sharks, thrive on the fear of their prey. If you cower, they grow stronger. But if you stand your ground, if you refuse to be intimidated, you strip them of their power. Courage, he reminds us, is the antidote to fear, and it's something we all carry within us. So how do we rise to those moments when courage is required? How do we find our strength in the face of darkness and uncertainty? McRaven explores that next in Chapter 8, where he reveals the importance of being your very best even in the darkest moments. Let's continue. If you want to change the world, be your very best in the darkest moments. In Chapter 8, Admiral McRaven takes us into the depths of the unknown, where fear, chaos, and uncertainty test even the strongest individuals. He recalls one of the most challenging phases of SEAL training: the night dive. In the pitch-black waters of San Diego Bay, with visibility reduced to nothing, trainees were tasked with navigating under a ship to plant a practice mine. The darkness was so suffocating that it was easy to lose your bearings or let panic creep in. The instructors warned that this was the moment when a SEAL trainee's true character would be revealed, when everything else was stripped away, and all that remained was their training, focus, and willpower. McRaven explains that in the darkest of moments, there is no room for hesitation. You have to rise to the occasion, trust your preparation, and give it your absolute best, no matter how impossible the odds seem. He transitions this lesson to a real-life dark moment, one that's far heavier than a training dive. He describes the solemnity of a ramp ceremony at Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan, where fallen soldiers are honored before their final journey home. These ceremonies were among the most heartbreaking experiences of his career, but they were also the moments when he witnessed the absolute best in humanity. Soldiers, families, and entire communities would come together, united in grief, but also in strength, dignity, and unwavering resolve. McRaven highlights one story of a twin brother who, after losing his sibling in combat, chose to be a pillar of strength for the other soldiers. Instead of breaking under the weight of loss, he rose above it, ensuring his brother's memory would be honored with pride. These moments, McRaven says, prove that even in life's darkest hours, we have the ability to shine. It's about finding a way to be your best, not just for yourself but for those who depend on you. Life will throw us into the darkness whether through loss, failure, or overwhelming challenges. But it's in those moments that we have the chance to show who we really are. By rising to the occasion, we find not only strength but also the ability to inspire others. And speaking of inspiration, McRaven moves into Chapter 9, where he explores how hope can be the most powerful force of all. In the next chapter, we'll see how even a single voice can bring light to the darkest mudflats. Let's continue. If you want to change the world, start singing when you're up to your neck in mud. This chapter begins in the infamous Tijuana mudflats during Hell Week, the most grueling part of SEAL training. By this point, the trainees were beyond exhausted, no sleep, constant physical challenges, and relentless cold. Now, waist-deep in freezing mud, with the wind howling and the darkness closing in, morale was at rock bottom. To make matters worse, an instructor stood on the edge of the mudflats with a bullhorn, taunting them. He promised warmth, hot coffee, and rest if only 5 men would quit. Just 5. It was a tempting offer, and McRaven recalls seeing the resolve of his classmates begin to crack. And then it happened. One voice began to sing. A raspy, off-key tune rose above the wind, cutting through the hopelessness like a beam of light. At first, it was just one voice, but soon, another joined in. Then another. Before long, the entire group was singing, defying the cold, the exhaustion, and the instructor's threats. The singing didn't make the mud any warmer or the night any shorter, but it did something even more powerful. It gave them hope. That single voice reminded everyone that they weren't alone, that they could endure, and that even in the darkest moments, there's strength in unity. McRaven reflects on the extraordinary power of hope, not just in SEAL training but in life. He shares a poignant story from Dover Air Force Base, where the remains of soldiers killed in action were being returned to their families. It was one of the heaviest days McRaven had ever experienced. Grieving families filled the room, struggling with unbearable loss. But among them was Marine Lieutenant General John Kelly, a man who had lost his own son in combat. Kelly, through his words and presence, brought a profound sense of understanding and strength to those families. His ability to connect with them, to remind them they weren't alone in their pain, brought hope where there was only sorrow. Hope, McRaven explains, has a transformative power. It's what keeps us going when we're neck-deep in life's mud. It's what inspires us to hold on, to endure, and to lift others up when they're struggling. And sometimes all it takes is one voice, one act of resilience to change everything. But as powerful as hope is, it means nothing if we quit when things get tough. That's why McRaven ends his journey with perhaps the most important lesson of all. Never, ever quit. In Chapter 10, he takes us to the final challenge of SEAL training and the mindset it takes to push through. Let's dive in. If you want to change the world, don't ever ring the bell. Admiral McRaven closes his journey with the most important lesson of all. Never quit. This chapter takes us to the first day of SEAL training, where the trainees were introduced to a simple brass bell. It hung in the center of the training compound, visible to everyone, every single day. The rules were clear. If the training became too much, if the pain, the cold, the exhaustion, or the doubt overwhelmed you, all you had to do was ring the bell 3 times. Ring it and you'd be done. No more early mornings. No more endless runs. No more grueling swims or relentless instructors. Just 3 rings and you could walk away. But McRaven makes it clear. Ringing the bell isn't just quitting, it's giving up on the belief that you can endure. And SEAL training, he explains, is designed to push you to that edge, to make you question everything about your physical and mental strength. There are moments when you're so cold, wet, and exhausted that the bell becomes almost seductive. The idea of relief, of comfort, is almost too good to resist. Yet those who make it through, the ones who become SEALs, are the ones who refuse to give in, no matter how hard it gets. McRaven shares stories of his classmates who faced unimaginable challenges but never gave up. He talks about one trainee, small in stature but massive in heart, who fought through injury and pain simply because quitting wasn't an option. He recalls how this unyielding determination, this refusal to ring the bell, wasn't just about physical strength, it was about grit, resilience, and the belief that perseverance could overcome any obstacle. The lesson, McRaven emphasizes, extends far beyond SEAL training. In life, the bell comes in many forms. The temptation to quit a tough job, the urge to walk away from a challenging relationship, or the desire to give up on your dreams when the odds feel stacked against you. But the same rule applies: never, ever ring the bell. Because if you can endure the darkest moments, if you can push past the pain and doubt, you'll come out stronger on the other side. And so, McRaven ends with this powerful reminder. Life will be hard. It will test you, challenge you, and try to break you. But if you stay the course, if you never quit, you'll not only change your own life, you just might change the world. With that, McRaven brings his lessons full circle, reminding us that it all starts with the small things. A made bed, a helping hand, a resilient heart, and above all, the courage to keep going. So, as you face your own battles, remember this: don't ever ring the bell. Your journey is worth it. And there you have it, the 10 life lessons from Make Your Bed by Admiral William H. McRaven. From starting your day with a small victory to never, ever quitting. These lessons remind us that change doesn't come from grand gestures or overnight transformations. It comes from small, consistent actions, from a mindset that refuses to give up, and from the courage to face life's toughest challenges head-on. This book is a testament to the power of resilience, discipline, and hope. It shows us that even when life feels overwhelming, we can find strength in the smallest of things, like a perfectly made bed. And as McRaven so eloquently puts it, these small acts don't just have the power to change your life. They can change the world. So, if you found inspiration in these lessons, why not take action today? Start with one small change. Make your bed. Reach out to someone who's helped you paddle through tough times, or simply refuse to let failure define you. And if this message resonated with you, help us spread it. Like this video, share it with someone who could use a little motivation, and don't forget to subscribe for more insights like these. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Remember, the world can be a tough place, but with discipline, courage, and hope, you have the power to overcome anything and maybe, just maybe, change the world in the process. See you next time.